Good evening. Welcome to this evening edition of the Vision Root video blog. I'm your host, Richard Urban. I'm coming to you from historic Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. This is the fifth installment of 7 on the issues in the presidential election, and we're comparing the stands of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Tonight, we're talking about abortion. There have been more than 59 million abortions since the Roe v. Wade decision in 1973 in the United States. And in fact, there have been over 17 million abortions of black babies. And just this year, there have been almost over 900,000 abortions. So this is a huge amount of babies killed, the most innocent life. So I'd like to play a clip of this issue. Is what I think one of the most key and starkest issues of difference between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And I'd like to play a clip of them discussing this issue in the third and final presidential debate. So let's watch that clip
Make a
now.
determination.
Secretary Clinton.
Well, I strongly support Roe v. Wade, which guarantees a constitutional right to a woman to make the most intimate, most difficult, in many cases, decisions about her health care that one can imagine. And in this case, it's not only about Roe v. Wade. It is about what's happening right now in America. So many states are putting very stringent regulations on women that block them from exercising that choice, to the extent that they are defunding Planned Parenthood, which of course provides all kinds of cancer screenings and other benefits for women in our country. Donald has said he's in favor of defunding Planned Parenthood. He even supported shutting the government down to defund Planned Parenthood. I will defend Planned Parenthood. I will defend Roe v. Wade, and I will defend women's rights to make their own health care decisions.
Secretary
And we have come too far to have that turned back now. And indeed, he said women should be punished, that there should be some form of punishment for women who obtain abortions. And I could just not be more opposed to that kind of thinking.
I'm going to give you a chance to respond, but I want to ask you, Secretary Clinton, I want to explore how far you believe the right to abortion goes. You have been quoted as saying that the fetus has no constitutional rights. You also voted against a ban on late-term partial birth abortions. Why?
Because Roe v. Wade very clearly sets out that there can be regulations on abortion so long as the life and the health of the mother are taken into account. And when I voted as a senator, I did not think that that was the case. The kinds of cases that fall at the end of pregnancy are often the most heartbreaking, painful decisions for families to make. I have met with women who, toward the end of their pregnancy, get the worst news one could get, that their health is in jeopardy if they continue to carry to term, or that something terrible has happened or just been discovered about the pregnancy. I do not think the United States government should be stepping in and making those most personal of decisions. So you can regulate if you are doing so with the life and the health of the mother taken into account.
Mr. Trump, your reaction, and particularly on this issue of late-term partial birth
Well,
abortion.
I think it's terrible. If you go with what Hillary is saying, in the 9th month, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb of the mother just prior to the birth of the baby. Now, you can say that that's okay, and Hillary can say that that's okay, but it's not okay with me. Because based on what she's saying and based on where she's going and where she's been, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month on the final day. And that's not acceptable.
Well, that is not what happens in these cases. And using that kind of scare rhetoric is just terribly unfortunate.
So Donald Trump clearly is on the pro-life side, and Hillary Clinton is on the pro-abortion side. So she got a 100% rating for the National Abortion Rights Active Action League. And on the other hand, Donald Trump says, I hate the concept of abortion. Also, Hillary Clinton believes Planned Parenthood should be funded. Not only that, she's going to fight for funding of Planned Parenthood. She claims that they do a lot of women's health procedures. Of course, those procedures like cancer screenings can be done elsewhere. In fact, out of the 59 million abortions performed in the U.S. since 1970, Planned Parenthood has performed over 7 million abortions. I'd also like to remind you that the most dangerous place for a black baby is in their mother's womb. And yeah, so I think this is a really stark contrast between the candidates. So Clinton says that she's okay with a baby that's almost ready to be born being aborted, and claiming that that almost never happens. But in fact, there were some 12,000 abortions like that over the course of a year recently, in 1 year period. So, that is what happens. A baby is killed when it's almost viable. I mean, it's a viable human being, even, with the modern technology, months earlier, but almost when the baby's born. And that's okay with Mrs. Clinton. That's not okay. Conception begins at birth. God gives the baby a spirit. This is a national crime. Now, I also want to point out the fact, something that's not often talked about, is that Mrs. Clinton is against teaching absence from sex before marriage. She said, speaking on defunding Planned Parenthood, "We've seen them in Florida where Jeb Bush funneled millions of taxpayer dollars into abstinence-only programs while cutting funds for crucial family planning programs," i.e., read abortion, family planning programs. So what happens? Well, I've been teaching abstinence-centered sex education for some almost 20 years. So what happens, and I've been working almost exclusively in the District of Columbia. So generally what happens is condoms are promoted, any kind of sexuality, it's okay to explore, or it's not explained that abstinence is the preferred and best thing, and in fact is the expected standard for school-age children, which was part of the standard set up, actually, under the Bill Clinton administration. But that was trashed by the Obama administration, and it certainly will be trashed, if Hillary Clinton was there, which she won't be if you get out and vote. So what I'm saying is, it's a scam. So kids are encouraged to use condoms, but in no country anywhere in the world do more than say 69 or so percent of people use condoms. So, and in any case, even if you use 100% of the time, they fail to prevent pregnancy 25% of the time. So kids are going to get pregnant, and then they're going to get an abortion. And then in places like DC, girls as young as 12 get abortion without parental consent. And that's why the most dangerous place for a baby in the black community is in the womb. Why did I say the black community? Because there are virtually zero abortions in DC, like maybe a small handful, among other communities other than the black community and maybe some in the Hispanic community, but much less. So this is really a crime. It's like genocide. So I don't know why. There are actually good groups waking up to that, that are bringing out this kind of genocide. So here in Mrs. Clinton, you have a willing perpetrator of this kind of genocide in the black community, and in fact, across the board. She has no problem with the baby being ripped from the womb. So Mr. Trump is absolutely correct about that. That's what's happening. A viable baby being ripped apart, maybe the head being decapitated, being killed in any case. That doesn't make any sense at all. And when you think about that, some 80% of abortions are outside of the realm of marriage. If we promoted abstinence from sex, which Mrs. Clinton is against, then we wouldn't have to have such a sham going on among Planned Parenthood, which is like a big money-taking facility for taking the federal money and performing abortions. When the sex education, which is completely ineffective, that is promoted, fails. So if you want that kind of policy, then that's what you're going to get with Hillary Clinton, more of Obama's policy. So this is really a terrible crime. I mean, also, as a Christian in God's eyes, can you just, create a life and then a spirit and then just decide to kill it? Marriage should be sacred. It is sacred, and that's when sex should occur and when life should occur. So the whole concept is totally different between Mr. Trump, who believes in the sanctity of life, and also Mr. Pence spoke about that, saying the sanctity of life proceeds out of the belief that ancient principle where God says, "Before you were formed in the womb, I knew you." Well, that's the vice presidential candidate speaking. But that's not the viewpoint of Hillary Clinton. She's perfectly fine with abortion even just before the baby is born. So this is a brutal thing. This is like, it's just like incredibly brutal murder of the baby. What kind of woman is this who promotes this kind of thing? So this difference is so clear on Donald Trump. So if anybody's not sure about any differences, if you respect life, if you respect, the sanctity of sexual relations, that they should occur in a married relationship, that they should, then I would say you would tilt toward definitely the side of Mr. Trump, who believes in the sanctity of life and who believes that babies should not just be aborted at any time they like, even up to the almost the last days of pregnancy. So this is an absolutely stark difference in opinion. And I have to say it's really a core and a crucial issue because you're talking about human life, the dignity and value of human life. And this is all cloaked by Mrs. Clinton and a lot of, the women's health concerns. Well, it's actually not about the women's health concerns, it's about sexual convenience. Because generally, if you have if you're married, you want to have children, and abortion is much more rare, at least 80% more rare in a marriage situation. So this is really about what kind of world we're building. Is it one where we cherish children? And Mrs. Clinton says she's so for children's rights. What the heck? Children's rights, as long as you're not in the womb, it's okay. Hey, if you're a child in the womb, we'll just murder you. But we're fighting for children's rights. Sure, right. That's another two-faced lie by Mrs. Clinton. So those are the comparison and the issue of life. The choice is clear. The choice is for the person who believes in life, and that is Mr. Donald Trump. So I hope you enjoyed this comparison of issues. We'll have two more segments. Do get out and vote. Do share these videos with your friends. I'm Richard Urban, coming to you from historic Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Do be blessed at this historic time. Do vote, and we'll see you for our next installment. Good night.